Welcome to the first roller derby broadcast event planning panel hosted by the WFTDA and produced by WFTDA and Quad Media. Today I have assembled a beautiful panel of some of my favorite people in the WFTDA and greater roller derby sphere to talk about broadcast experiences and especially the documents that were just published a couple weeks ago that are kind of a deep dive into what all of us have been doing as roller derby broadcasters. So I'm going to start the whole thing out by introducing our panel. First, let's take a look at the agenda. So I'm planning for this whole thing to take about an hour of condensed content just focused on the broadcast guides, the publications, and answering some basic questions. After the 1 hour mark, the panelists may need to go off and do other things, but I will still be available to do any follow-up questions. If anybody wants to talk in depth about their situation, I'm happy to stick around. It's a Saturday in Portland. I have nothing better to do. I'm here for you. So, again, I've assembled a lovely group of people for this. This wonderful poster made by Smack and the marketing team. I also want to give big props right off the bat to them. The WFTDA marketing team and design team have been extremely helpful through this whole process. They're the ones who did the whole style of the documents that were published. They helped me with the copywriting, the editing, everything that went into it, including the lovely graphics for all of my the appendix where we go deep into kind of workflows and budgeting. So big ups to the WFTDA for all the help they've provided in making these documents possible, and thank you to these people. So first I'll introduce Greta. Greta, wave for the camera.
Sorry, yeah, I'm waving.
Greta is one of the original 8 members of the Queens of Pain. Greta joined Gotham during the first, or technically second, season of the league's history. Greta's a freelance filmmaker with her own production company, The One That Got Away LLC. Created a video committee originally as a way to help skaters and officials get better. And I've highlighted that because I want to come back to that. By standardizing a system of filming and delivering coaching cuts, refining the process through multi-camera editing. Eventually, teammate and professional senior producer Steel Magnolia obtained some sweet sponsorships and gear and landed Gotham a regular television show on NYC Life, a local public access station where the show ran for 4 seasons. That's a really cool thing we'll talk about in a bit. Greta Turbo retired from Gotham in 2011, finished her first feature, Remedy, joined Garden State for 3 seasons, skating with Taco Cat, among many other great Garden State players, and then finally came home to Gotham for the 2020 season, immediately walking back into the gauntlet as the head of video committee. She sees the current skating pause as a great opportunity to expand both who gets to see games and who fans get to meet via virtual events, with a focus on reaching audience that may, believe it or not know derby is a thing. So that's Greta's lovely bio. I want to hit on a few points when we get deeper into the show, because Gotham's broadcast path is very interesting and unique among derby broadcasting. Chad, NERDerby, sent me a lengthy bio that is NERDerby is the global derby media juggernaut. Yeah. No arguing there. I asked Chad how many years he's been involved with derby, and we think it's about 6. And he's been streaming derby through NERDerby for 4 or 5 years, something like that. Guesstimating somewhere upwards of 25 individual events, which is quite a lot. And I have to mention that Chad has done a fantastic job of putting out some Derby streaming production guides that are really fantastic, some videos that he recorded a few years ago that get into like, hey, I want to stream games, where do I start? So among the many other talents and contributions, that's something that really I feel like provided a lot to the community. Finally, Scar Trek. Trek started skating in 2009 in Denver, Colorado. After moving to Washington, D.C., she skated for the DC All-Stars for the last 5 years. Over that time, Trek has been involved in roller derby broadcasting and announcing, first with DNN and now with the WFTDA. This year, she's taken on the bout planning position for DC Rollergirls with the specific goal of bringing roller derby broadcast to the DC area fans as soon as the league is back to skating. So this is the big reason that I really wanted to have Trek as part of the panel, is that not only has she been involved with broadcasting and been on WFTDA broadcasts, she is also now an event planner, which this guide was written for. So I've had some really great conversations with Trek earlier this year about like, hey, we're thinking about streaming. We want to do some streaming. What should I do? And I kept saying, I'm going to publish a paper on what you should do. Just hold on. So part of today's experience will be finding out whether or not I answered any of Trek's questions. Okay, so last but not least, there is me. I am the one on the left. To my right, or to the right, is Rocket Mean. I don't believe Rocket Mean is on the call today. I am the Quad Media Director of Live Broadcast Operations as of January 2020. I've been in the television and broadcast industry for 20 years. It's been my education and my career the whole time. I love it. I'm a big technical nerd and love putting on creating video. I'm also a Rose City Rollers and Portland Men's Roller Derby alum. I was involved with Rose City Rollers starting in 2006 and helped found Portland Men's Roller Derby. I've been a lot less connected to roller derby directly in the last 5-6 years due to my career conflicts, but now my career is roller derby, so I'm back. And I've been part of WFTDA broadcasting really since the inception. I was working with Blaze Streaming when Blaze started covering Rose City roller games, and then eventually got contracts with the WFTDA to cover WFTDA tournaments. So when WFTDA broadcast started about 10 years ago, I was there. I wasn't a big part of it, but I've always kind of been around, and I've known Double H for a long, long time, and gotten to see it all grow. So that brings us to the publications. Is there anything that we missed in the bios that y'all want to weigh in on?
No, thanks.
Okay, so the broadcast publications that came out a couple weeks ago, the most confusing thing about this is that we dropped 2 documents on the same day, and they are named very similarly, and they look very similar. So that's the very first thing I want to address here, is that there are 2 guides. One is an event planning guide, and the other is a return to play guide. And the differences are listed here, but I just want everybody to understand that the event planning guide is a big document. It's like 22 pages, and it is a collection of information that we have developed through our experiences and being involved in television broadcasting and now live streaming and working with WFTDA broadcasting. It is mostly about how to get streaming in your events, because holding an event is one thing, holding an event that will also be streaming is another, and there are just a ton of considerations that everybody should know going in, like what do I need to be thinking about if I'm going to stream this tournament or this game. Just like you have to think about fire codes and seating capacity and ticketing and permitting, and all those other things that you have to do before you can hold a tournament, you should be thinking about your broadcast when you're doing all of those and developing that. So that's a perennial guide that, you know, applies to any event and will continue to be applicable, and we will continue to update that with new ideas, new practices, new things to help everybody understand things that they should be thinking about when planning events. The Return to Play guide is specifically because we're in the artificial off season of 2020 with no gameplay going on. Of course, an event planning guide wasn't real important, but we decided to push out, here are some tack-on ideas that you should be thinking about as you're planning for your return to play. Here are things you can start doing now that are in addition to broadcasting games. So it's a standalone document. It's really only applicable because we don't have any games to broadcast right now. And it's just a collection of ideas. It hopefully will not be updated because we will return to play eventually, and that'll be that. So again, what is the event planning guide? The too long did not read, because it's 23 pages version, is that it's a series of questions, really, and Double H was the one that inspired, like, let's just set it up as questions. So how do I stream? How do I make video? How do I make revenue from the video I'm making? What else should I consider? So again, it's prompts of things to think about, and I hope that we answered all of these questions in the document. The document really started, it was kicking around in my mind before I ever started working for Quad Media directly. But then I really started laying the framework for it of how do I help educate everybody, share my experience over 10 years of WFTDA broadcasting, and how do I get everybody kind of a baseline of information and lessons learned so that you all have an easier time getting into broadcasting. So this started back in January. I really had a kind of an outline and rough draft in February, and then the whole world got locked down. So it was kind of pushed to the back burner. It was de-emphasized for a while, but it's been in development for a long time, which has given me a really great opportunity to talk with other people, and it's gone through a series of revisions and input from other people in the community. So it's been a long time developing to come up with these questions and answers for the community. The what it's not, I think, is a really important thing for everybody who is just reading it. I try to be really clear about this, is that it doesn't answer the biggest question that I always get, which is, what should I buy? We don't cover gear. We don't cover technical production. We don't cover anything that has to do with actually making video. And that's because those things can be answered after you plan your event, right? So the event planning guide is something that should start the first moment you know that you're going to have a tournament or a game. And, you know, if you're 6 months or 12 months away from that event, you should be covering everything in the planning guide first. The actual how to make video, those questions can be answered once you've answered all the questions in the event planning guide. That is a guide that we are planning to make. It's coming someday, but you are not going to open this thing and see a purchase list or a how to use OBS guide or anything like that. This is specifically a document for event planners. It's also not a guide of, oh my gosh, I have an event next week and I really want to stream it, because all of this planning is truly planning things that should happen way in advance, not things that can happen the week before your event. So sneak peek, again, I've already stated there's a lot more questions than there are answers. Every time somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need help streaming my event, like, I just have a list of questions. What's your internet like? Do you have internet? Where is it? Who's your audience? Do you want to charge for pay-per-view? How are you going to produce the video? Where's the video going? So this is to kind of get ahead of that and set that expectation that if you're planning your event, you should be asking all these questions and hopefully finding the answers somewhere in that document. And if you don't, you're always welcome to come to me and have a consultation about the event that you're trying to put on. Everybody's favorite section that I get the most feedback for is Wi-Fi is a 4-letter word. We kind of go deep on internet, and it's because internet is a big deal if you're streaming. And so many roller derby events book in venues that might not have internet. And if you don't have internet, how are you going to stream? So if you come to me and say, how do I stream my event? That's why I always ask, what kind of internet do you have? And if you say, oh yeah, the venue has Wi-Fi, that's not a good answer. That's a bad place to start. So the guide does go into detail about what you should be looking for in a venue and internet, and why Wi-Fi is not an answer to that question. Find a friend for help. This is the section that talks about partnering with a vendor, be that a community member like Chad, or a professional video production service like Blaze Streaming, or any of these others. We kind of go into some options and considerations about where you can find video production help. Roller derby is a great DIY community. I've seen amazing things come out of roller derby DIY production, but also understand that that's not the only way to do it. You don't have to build everything from the ground up. There are already roller derby streamers, with plenty of experience that you can ask for help. And it may be the right course to, instead of trying to DIY it, finding a partner, a video production partner, who might do it for free, might volunteer, or they might cut you a deal. So when we talk about planning your event and planning video production, don't think that you have to do it alone. Don't think that it has to be something that your league members should be sinking all their time and energy into. There are lots of people who produce video. You focus on roller derby, ask a friend to do your video stuff. And the last bullet point, big numbers and small numbers. I wanted to give everybody kind of an idea of what's it going to cost me. And it was funny, in the edit process, I put a line early in the document that says, your cost can be anywhere from hundreds of dollars to tens of thousands. And the editor corrected that to say thousands. And I was like, no, no, really, tens. I want everybody to understand roller derby broadcasting can be extremely expensive. And you really have to set your expectations for what your budget is, what you think you can make in revenue. One of the things that I want to jump back to Chad's video that I've mentioned. One of the things that Chad mentions in his video is like, hey, we're doing a budget conscious build here. Understand that the reason the WFTDA tournaments have to sell watch passes is because they're spending so much on the production. And it's true. The number that I have on this slide that's circled, $14,920, that's just about our budget for our cup level tournaments. Not D2, they're cups now. So share a link to Chad's video. Absolutely, we can. Chad, do you think you can find that and drop that in the attendee chat?
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks.
What's my web address again? Where am I?
It's been a little while.
Can you email it to me, because I don't have the chat anymore? I have no idea why I can't see anybody, but I can't.
So everybody knows we are recording today. This recording will be published somewhere, probably the WFTDA's YouTube channel, maybe in the education channel. I'm not sure, but we'll get it out and published. And with that, I am definitely going to include a bunch of links. So I'm also taking notes of the links and stuff that I want to provide for everybody. I think Chad's how-to video is really excellent. One of the things that I love about it is that it is being budget conscious. And I think, what was the budget? Like $500. You wanted to hit an even 500?
Like five or six. That was a year ago, and prices on things have kind of jumped on things like webcams, so that's probably not going to be accurate now.
Exactly where my point was going to go. Is part of the reason that I have avoided this conversation is what should I buy and how much is it going to cost, is because right now, due to shipping delays, due to shortages, due to everybody working from home and buying a webcam, all of the prices are ridiculous if the equipment is in stock. So part of the reason that I'm slowing down the process of doing the what should I buy and how do I produce it is because the technology continues to improve and change, and meanwhile we have a serious shortage of gear to do the work with. So it is a great video. It's a great place to start with the what should I buy question, but understand that right now is not the greatest time. And I think I go into that in the return to play guide that, now is not a great time to invest in stuff. So be thinking about when you return to play. If you choose to buy instead of rent, wait until prices have kind of evened out. A good question, and thank you for that. Okay, next slide. Return to play. Too long, didn't read. It's only a few pages. It's not very long. I think it's only 6 pages. But this guide is more about the ideas for the right now. What should you be doing? Could you be doing? What can you do to prepare for returning to play in a broadcast sense? And a lot of it goes into set up a Twitch channel. Greta Turbo set up a Twitch channel. Hey, she did. Gotham is on Twitch every night. It's fantastic. Thinking about when you return to practice, put a video out there of your team practicing. And then when you get back to gameplay, be thinking about, hey, we need ticket revenue, but we also can't have 500 people come to a game. So how do we replace ticket revenue? Well, pay-per-view may be an option. If you have good video and good streaming, maybe you can replace your tickets with watch passes. So that's the kind of things that are covered in there. There's some examples we link to, like Gotham's Twitch channel, like Rose City Rollers productions that they put on YouTube. There's a lot of cool ideas in there, and we are, of course, looking for more ideas, and we're happy to share more ideas. It's really, again, just a guide for, hey, we're stuck in a place where we can't play roller derby and we can't broadcast roller derby. What can we do to prepare for the time when we can't play again? And what can we do right now to reach our audience, to keep people engaged? We'll get into the difference of social media versus long form video and broadcast later, but there is kind of a difference between, oh, well, we're posting stuff to Instagram all the time, right? Like those little short vids or, TikTok or whatever. Those are great. Those are cool. But also understand that putting out long form video can also attract and engage an audience. And there's more opportunities for monetization that can help you with keeping your league going and maybe helping any budget shortfalls that are happening because of COVID. There's also some stuff about what we're planning, which we'll get into a little later. So now I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to open it up to the panel. Tell me your thoughts, your impressions, everything you learned or did not learn or thought was missing.
I guess there's a couple things I would just really want to call out. I always come at this from the DIY angle. There's undoubtedly people who are either involved in your leagues in some capacity or maybe on the periphery who know how to do things, and that you add all those things together and all of a sudden you've got a stream team. The important thing is to just kind of ask and just put it out there. Say, hey, does anybody have any experience streaming on Twitch? I guarantee you that there's somebody who's involved or not far away, not far removed from your team that's streaming games on Twitch all the time.
Like video games, right?
Like video games. Yeah. They're streaming,
Mm-hmm.
they're playing games, they're, I don't know, Fortnite or whatever the kids play these days. They're doing that all the time, and they can be an incredible resource. And that's a huge chunk of knowledge that you don't have to try to figure out on your own.
Yeah, actually, I want to add one element to part of the reason that, excuse me, part of the reason that Gotham was successful kind of putting this together, other than the fact that I was desperately calling Ben starting back in January before we were ever shut down. We kind of figured out from the DIY aspect that even not having professional shooters wasn't a hindrance, and sometimes it would be a help. Because sometimes when you are watching derby events, and there's been an evolution about how these things have been filmed over time. And tell me if I'm kind of getting too into the weeds, Ben, because I can't see your face and I can't see your looks of disapproval. Literally, there have been times when we have hired professionals who were not able to shoot derby as well as amateur skaters with no camera experience. So
I am nodding emphatically with that.
Yes. And actually, one of my pet little keep myself sane Twitch projects is this thing that we've been doing called Gotham After Dark. And what it is basically an excuse for me to go dig through all the hard drives and find all these games that will never see the light of day again. And I played a game the other day, and it was I actually got reawakened to some of the stuff that we were able to innovate back in like 2009, where we were just trying to figure out how to shoot derby well, because there were professionals. Like if you look at the old, is it MAV or MAV TV? I'm pronouncing it wrong every time.
Yeah, it was MAV MAV.
Yeah, so MAV TV was the first televised like on a channel derby, and essentially it was Man Show, the television station. It was very weird. But the way they were shooting it was cameras on the floor, four corners, like NASCAR. Only problem is that derby's track is like a fraction of the size, so it didn't work. So we were trying to figure out how to shoot it, and then we realized like, oh, we need height like the old school derby days, and we also need to figure out a way to make it exciting for fans to watch, not just exciting for us to see how we are in relation to each other. So we've had to figure out shooters who not only understand action, but also understand how to watch the game, or how someone would watch the game in a way that would make it look exciting. So it's always about finding this balance between like quote unquote good shooting, quote unquote understandable shooting, and a person who's never seen derby before who's going to be confused. It's going to happen. Are they going to be excited? And like it's finding these weird balances that often will be better served by skaters who know the game, who know what they are looking for, than just having someone who's going to shoot and try to find like continuity and like whatever. So yeah, that's just something I want to say, that you don't necessarily have to hire pros to get the best results.
Yeah, I want to hook onto that and say that definitely camera operating is not a difficult thing. Knowing that camera, setting up that camera, doing the white balance, getting everything like technically ready is something that takes some experience and know-how. But actually running a camera to shoot roller derby, if you have played roller derby, if you've been a referee, if you are just a fan who really knows and understands the game, you can shoot roller derby. Some of my best camera operators are former players or current players who just know the game so well that they know what they need to look at to play the game. So they know that that's where they point the camera, and they do a fantastic job. I want to shout out as well to Kool-Aid, former announcer for Texas. One day, or at one of the tournaments, we were back there in our control booth. We were switching the show, and he's like getting into it, watching over our shoulder. He thinks it's amazing. And I was like, here, hop in. And I sat Kool-Aid down at the switcher and let Kool-Aid switch the game. And I directed over his shoulder, kind of told him what cameras to take, and he was switching it. And after a few jams, I was like, all right, it's your show, take off. And Kool-Aid directed a game with zero production experience, but Kool-Aid had been an announcer and so involved with derby for so long, he just naturally knew what was going on. So you're absolutely right. I do get into it a little bit in the guide about like use your volunteers, use your community to make it happen. But I appreciate you bringing it up that that's a great place to start. The first budget scenario in the guide is $0 because it is based on utilizing your volunteer labor to do it, because I truly feel that people who are already part of your community can put on a fantastic production.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment, Ben, that there's a lot. There's cameras, there's internet, there's scoreboard overlay, microphones, so much, to put together to create especially a game broadcast. And what I like about the guide as it is now is that it really outlines how you can ramp it up. Instead of going from 0 to a full-scale production, there's some things in between, some ideas for how to take it with a DIY approach versus get professional help versus kind of build your own equipment, catalog to where you can do it on your own or with professional help on the production side, but owning all the equipment within the league, things like that. So I do think there's a nice ramp up and a nice way to kind of dip your toe in with some things as you get started.
I'll also say that in the future roadmap, which we'll talk about at the end of the call, there are at least 3 more guides planned that are along these lines. Event planning is volume 1 of what could be a 4+ volume series. The next one that I want to tackle is the question of what should I buy? It will be a technical production guide. After that, I don't know if it'll be combined or if it'll be separate, but the look of roller derby as a broadcast sport, because visual literacy, I think, is a big part of this. And that's what Greta was talking about, is like, how do you make this, how do you present in an understandable way, both for your own viewers and for audience. To get back to what was in Greta's bio about how there was it a broadcast committee?
Committee? The first one, the original thing was literally it was me, and a double layer DVD burner. And I would take a whole bunch of my friends and I would all put together our SD DVX100Bs, which is why the footage actually looks so good, because it was actually a really good camera, even though it was SD. Yeah. And then we would shoot from all these different angles. I would sync them and then make I can't believe I'm going to say this on a webinar, but much like porn was putting out these things where you could switch angles on your own.
Yeah, the angle button on the DVD player. Yeah.
So basically making it so that you could change what part of the game you were looking at on your remote control. And it was pretty great because it was clunky, but it worked. And then from that, it kind of what can we do? Could we do this live? How do we do this live? But I didn't know because that wasn't my world. And then we just happened to have Steel Magnolia kind of come in right around that time. And because she worked for a production company, she kind of already had a way into that. And Black Magic was just starting. So they gave us this dinosaur prototype that still works. It's held together with epoxy. Black
Magic is an equipment vendor that creates switchers and other video things. Just to that's not a derby name. That's their business name.
You can slice your finger on this thing. It is clunky, but it still works. And it was how we started doing the actual streaming. And we were actually using Twitch's kind of baby name, Justin TV.
Oh yeah,
to do it. Yeah. And so the very, very first thing that we did after getting together this kind of multicam idea is how do we put this out there? And with an eye of making it entertaining, knowing that we would always have these coaching cuts to make the league better, but that for the actual audience, and this sometimes gets me in trouble, it is important to make the game fun to watch. And that has been kind of this always towing the line of how do you make it understandable and fun for someone who knows the sport and for someone who doesn't. So yeah.
The part that I highlighted in your bio was that the committee was originally a way to help skaters and officials get better. Mm-hmm. And this is something that's always been part of WFTDA broadcast, is that we're not just out there to reach fans, we're also providing the video for skaters and coaches and officials. That's why to us, it's not always about whiz bang look. A lot of it is those big wide shots that show everything so that everybody gets a sense of everything that's happening. So understand that that's part of it too. Part of our broadcasting is to provide a service for the community, for everybody to improve by seeing those games. If we can sell tickets and make some money off it, that's even better. Let's help everybody. But yeah, that whole visual literacy thing, that's why it's one of the things that I want to write a better guide to.
And there's two versions of the visual literacy. Like, I feel like most leagues have already been doing some form of coaching cut. Like, most leagues do film their own games. Most leagues know that they should be filming the entire pack. Don't focus on the jammer going around. Just focus, like things like that. I mean, these were all things that we had to learn. But I mean, so when I approached the committee now, I was saying we have an internal and an external purpose. The internal purpose is for us to learn and watch ourselves and get better. The external is for us to please an audience. And there are two distinct versions of film language that we have to think about. And so I actually try to kind of make sure that we have back in the day when I was doing it, we didn't have a game yet, so I wasn't able to do it this time. We literally would do two versions. We would do the coaching version and the non-coaching version.
We have a couple minutes left in this segment if we're going to stick to time, but I don't mind going over because I love hearing these stories and opinions. So I do want to shift real quick and put everything on track, because as somebody who is tasked with Derby event planning, what did you learn from the planning guide?
Well, I mean, one of the things I knew is that our league we have a warehouse, or practice facility that we rent. So that's kind of a unique situation. And one of the things we really need to do is use that space, to make money. And while we can't bring people in and host an audience in our space, we have to be able to invest in internet service to even start to think about opening the door to streaming. And so, knowing the kind of internet service that we need and, pricing that out and making that a part of the long-term investment, and also making that, making the return on that investment make sense for the league. It can't just be one game a month to cover all of this cost. So we've got to think creatively about how else we can monetize what we're doing to, make up for the cost of high quality internet being installed for the first time in that space, and then paying for it every month. So that was something, that we've been discussing as a league as well, and trying to think about when it makes sense to do that, and how much is too much to make that ongoing investment in high quality internet in our practice facility. So that's something that I think is really well covered in the guide. So it's pretty helpful.
You also approached a video production vendor to get a quote, yeah?
We did, yeah. I talked to a couple of local companies, and when I reached out, I was really surprised that they were so on it. They got right back to me with a lot of cool questions, and trying to get me a more detailed quote, I guess. I thought that they would be running around streaming every event, and they wouldn't care about some future possibility of doing a roller derby game. But they were pretty excited about the opportunity to work with us. But the quote came in at $2,500 to $3,000 per event, which I think you confirmed for me that that's kind of what any league could expect to pay, or at least, I don't know, we're in a major metropolitan area, so maybe that factors in. But yeah, so we're trying to compare, let's say $3,000 for one event to, something like $5,000 or $6,000 to invest in all of the equipment that we would need to make ongoing broadcast possible for the league. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Do we want to invest? Do we want to get help or see what equipment is already in our community that we could utilize? And like I said earlier, kind of how to ramp it up. We don't need to buy everything at once. I think we can take steps in the direction and build things up over time.
Cool. Chad, what else?
I think that looking at the sort of the size and all the information and the content that's in this document, probably be pretty easy to feel overwhelmed with that, but don't feel overwhelmed with this document. The okay thing right now is that we've got a lot of time on our hands. And that kind of leads me back to the don't message me a week before your event. And I'm looking at Bigly Smalls at Montreal.
Naming names. That's brutal.
I'm naming names.
Ouch.
But yeah, it was great. We were able to make that happen. But it is pretty tricky, even if I have all the equipment loaded in the vehicle ready to go, there's still things like, finding a hotel and all that stuff. But you have so much time right now to think about your next event and what that might look like. You're all in a great position right now to be able to start working on those things. And if you have questions on this, when you go through this document, like there's plenty of people out there to sort of, to answer stuff. I would actually throw out, if you're on Facebook and you're interested in streaming, there's a group called Roller Derby Streaming Geeks that kind of the brightest and the best streamers for Derby are all usually hanging out there. So that's worth a look.
Hey, Ben, before we move on, one other thing I wanted to call out from the document, which we may get into a little bit, but this was a new idea to me. It's the idea of non-live alternatives. And I wanted to call that out because I think a lot of leagues, including DC, are considering outdoor practices and outdoor games before we return indoor to our home venue. So if if any given venue may not have high quality internet, certainly the out of doors is not going to have high quality internet. So so if we can figure out ways to record the games, produce the content up to a level that we feel comfortable with, then that's a really great alternative to going straight to live streaming. So I wanted to call that aspect out. I think it's a great alternative for any league that isn't in a situation where they can get the quality of internet that they need.
Yeah, and actually I'll echo on that because that's what the NYC Live thing was. We did not stream direct. That was 100% packaged. We would record the live stream, sometimes, not always, release a version of that, but then like film segments, do all this kind of stuff, add graphics, like all these things. No one cared that it wasn't live. It's amazing. Like no one cared that they weren't seeing it as it was happening because they were seeing it a week or 2 weeks later. And those reruns ran for years. So, I mean, people are hungry to watch sports, period. So if you can't actually stream as it's happening, it's not the end of the world. You can still make content that you can put behind a paywall or do a pay-per-view. I mean, that's what movies are. So, and it's worth it, especially if you add additional parts to your content, like little interviews and segments about practices and, whatever you want to do.
What if you have all of Gotham descend into the Twitch chat room and just blow it up?
Oh, that never happens. That never happens. Yeah, we never have like more than 3 or 4 of us just like shooting emotes at each other. We've been having really good luck with that. That is one of the brightest parts about Gotham is like our sheer hunger to chat with each other. And like, I mean, everybody that one marathon day. Have you spoken about that yet? Because that was amazing. Because that was kind of that was basically, I think, like what do you call it? A test case for what Derby could be someday, where it's just constant games, just rotating like all day, and strange content, and interviews, and people do. It was great. I mean, Ben, do you want to speak to that? Because that was basically, you told me about that. We all jumped in within 48 hours. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, it was stressful. I didn't. To give everybody some background, WFTDA does have a partner Twitch channel, which means that we work closely with a few people at Twitch who are specifically on the TwitchSports team, trying to get more sports content on the platform. And on Monday, I got an email that said, hey, Twitch is launching a new thing, a new TwitchSports channel that's like an aggregator for Twitch Sports, and we are launching a specific category for sports broadcasting, because it used to be that we were all under like health and fitness or something like that. Or
Yep.
I don't
Just
know, it was
chatting.
something weird. Yeah. It was something weird that basically like 99% of streamers were using to like stream their solo workout. And then there would be a baseball game and a soccer game and roller derby, right? So they decided to split it off and say, no, we're making a sports specific category that you can stream into, and a Twitch Sports aggregator channel that will host games that live streams that are happening. Well, they gave us all of 48 hours notice about this, and I immediately turned around to everybody that I know has a Twitch channel, a roller derby Twitch channel, and I said, yo, here's an opportunity. If you can do something on this day, it would be a really cool thing for roller derby to have a big presence during this big launch day. So, kudos to everybody pulling out the stops and making something happen on short notice. WFTDA managed to play games all day. It also intersected with the Women's Soccer League announcing that they had a new women's soccer team called Angel City, and so we ran exclusively Angel City roller derby games that day. No aggression intended, just coincidence, right? And I know Gotham lit up some streams and Chad lit up some streams, and so throughout the day, roller derby was part of that big launch, and it was great. And we only did one live show all day, and it was just a quick thing where we had an old game, I think a game from last year, not that old, but we had live announcers. So Token Red Shirt and Derailia came on and they re-announced the game. And that was really cool because they got to announce the game as it's going on, but they also got to talk to chat about what was going on. So if people had questions about roller derby or questions about a specific player or coach or a penalty that was happening, we had some kind of insight into what was happening, so we could better explain the official reviews and things like that. But it was also a test case for when we get back to play. If you have a game that is happening and you don't have announcers or dedicated stream announcers, we can pipe in announcers remotely who are watching this game in sync and give play-by-play even though they're not in the room. So that falls under the Remy production model. So we did that. Gotham, what did you do on Gotham's channel for that day?
Oh boy, we did a lot. Basically, I just programmed a whole bunch of games, and then we within more like 24 hours got 4 people together to do a live broadcast that happened. We made sure that we dovetailed with you, so we would go I think we went either right before or right after. And because that's also important, when you're doing a bunch of streams like this, communicating with your other friends who are also streaming, so you can do things like raids and all sorts of stuff that gamers probably have known about forever. And I just learned about in the last 2 months. And we figured out, we did not get front page. You should probably talk about that. But we did maintain a position in the top, I believe, 5, even though I think we peaked out at about 300 viewers. We were in the top 5 sports all day long.
Yeah.
All day long. And then y'all got that rollout, which we have now gotten for our All-Stars game, and we're getting again tonight for a stream of a Traders game. But you got that rollout, which is a little scary. We watched it happen. I don't know if you want to speak about that, because that's one of those strange things about building your audience. You don't totally come in.
So we are going to cover artificial off-season and Twitch broadcasting and stuff like that. So let's get to that in a later segment.
Okay, got it.
Chad, did you want to tack on anything while we're still here?
No, I just it's one of those things. Maybe if it's not already in the broadcast event planning, it's just if you talk about that chat engagement is huge and it's killer. It is. It's a big part of the production, and that's having somebody who can be there to answer questions and engage with the viewers is huge. I'm seeing people in today's attendee list that I see at Derby events in chat. And I absolutely I'm thrilled that that's happening, and it's super exciting. And it's a key piece of streaming.
Yeah, and you build a different audience for different shows too. So that's the other thing is like the idea of being creative with the programming that was mentioned before. Now we have you have a talk show. We now have a talk show that's kind of more like it's kind of more like Bodega Boys Gotham Edition. It's a little interesting, and like where we're kind of like busting out of our traditional branding to try to see if we can kind of like get a little bit more, engagement again. And different audiences are coming to different streams, which is really great because you're like really are building a community that is well beyond anything that we were reaching when we were just dealing with our local audience.
Yeah. Trek, any final thoughts on the document? Responses to event planning specifically?
No, I think it's a great start, and I would really encourage people to spend some time looking at it and see, if there's something that doesn't make sense or you get lost in the middle of it, then that's where you find a friend and ask for some help, But yeah, it's a great resource, and kudos to you and to the WFTDA for putting it together.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I do want to, it looks like we are over time by about 13 minutes. I want to give my panelists an opportunity. If you need a break, you need to step away, you can. I do want to briefly have an audience Q&A. So feel free to step away for a couple minutes if you need to. Meanwhile, anybody in the audience, please drop your questions in chat, and we will try to respond to those. What do you got? What have we not talked about, not answered? 2-minute timer starting now.
Actually, Ben, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question. Because I'm looking at, again, the part that was the most valuable for me and will continue to be valuable for me is the monetization aspect, because that's the part that's the foreign part, because that's not really my bag. Do you think that you're going to be available, or we can have maybe a team available for consulting on that? Because again, I look at some of these things, my eyes glaze over, because I'm definitely, my wheelhouse is a different part of the production arena. So how do you think that can be made more accessible?
That is, yeah. I did plan to reveal the proposal that is happening at the end of this. But you're right.
I keep on messing up your stream here.
No, it's fine. I mean, that's the thing about these is like, it's such a big, unknown, murky topic that everybody just has a flood of questions. And this documentation was like me trying to get ahead of a lot of those questions that everybody keeps bringing. In fact, I see another one in the chat, and I'll get to it in a second. So the monetization is specifically pay-per-view. So let's talk about monetization in two different things. Pay-per-view, specifically selling a ticket to watch the game and putting your game behind a paywall. It seems really great, and people want to start there until they realize how expensive it gets. And Greta, you and I went through this earlier in the year, where you were looking at like, well, what if we play out these events, but we do them through a pay service? And we were looking at that one service that was for like, they mostly do like art shows and concerts and stuff like that, but they still wanted like a 30% cut or a 50% cut,
or like
something.
10 grand up front for a year. And that was the minimum. That was the lowest tier. Yeah. I mean, like the thing about like those, the pay-per-view sites, which is why I was more asking about like the one thing about Twitch that's strange is because it is written in something of a foreign language to people who aren't familiar with gaming, or like game theory and that kind of stuff. trying to figure out how to strategize subscriptions and what things go behind and when you make that jump. Because right now we're free. We're basically putting out everything. We're like and you, WFTDA, has been very, very conscious about putting certain things out and not, and doing all these things. And we're just starting to get to that stage because I think we've almost hit 700 followers. Like, I don't know how many you've got. A lot more than that. And so we didn't feel comfortable making that jump until, pretty recently. So, so we're kind of thinking about how to roll that out. And that is something that is a little bit of a mystery for us.
Yeah. Okay. So, pay-per-view, straight up pay-per-view is going to require that you either work with a vendor that is a pay-per-view vendor, and usually those charge pretty high cuts. They'll just want 50% off the ticket price, but they provide the streaming platform, they provide the site hosting, they provide the ticket sales, they take care of everything, but they get a huge cut. The other way to approach pay-per-view is to provide your own platform, which for the WFTDA for the last 10 years has meant investing the upfront thousands of dollars to have a white label platform, or unbranded. It's referred to both ways in the document, but you pay for the platform and then you work with a ticketing vendor. We've used Kling for the last few years. So it is a big monetary investment off the bat for us just to get started, just to get into pay-per-view. The upside, though, is that we stand to make any revenue past that. So the platform doesn't take a cut of revenue. Kling has a set amount, not a percentage amount. So to us, once we make that investment in the platform, it allows us, all upside to make as much money as we possibly can to offset our costs, right? So understand that pay-per-view tends to be really expensive. And when you start looking at your costs of just production, how do we recoup these costs? Well, pay-per-view is sometimes the answer, but sometimes it's going to cost you more in pay-per-view, for that platform, for that ticketing service, than you are actually going to make in ticket sales. So that's part of the thing to think about when it comes to budgeting and thinking about how you want to present, is that you're gonna run into an issue where pay-per-view could make you revenue, but you have to reach a certain level of sales, audience, and everything else to recoup the investment that it takes to get there. Or you have to sell half of your product, 50% of your revenue, to a service that will host it all for you. The other monetization angle is the soft paywalling, like doing Twitch subscriptions. You can do a subscriber only. You can do that on Twitch and YouTube, and Vimeo kind of has a platform for it, where you don't get to set the price. And this is why I call it a soft paywall, is because you don't get to set the price or control how that buy-in works. All you get to say is, I'm going to make a subscriber-only stream. Now, subscribing is not buying for that particular event. Subscribing is supporting your channel, throughout, and then any stream that you do, you can make it subscriber only. So that's still a soft paywall scenario. And the other side of that is ad revenue that may come from Twitch or YouTube. The thing with monetizing through ad revenue is it is not a good way to make money at the roller derby level. I will tell you that WFTDA has a 10-plus-year-old channel with thousands and thousands of hours of video on it, and there's not enough ad revenue per month to buy me a meal, one meal. So understand that ad revenue is not going to cover the cost of production, period. But subscribers are directly supporting your channel, and we've had a lot of success, still not big money success, but a lot more sustainable success getting subscribers on our Twitch channel, and now YouTube has a model that's very similar. $5 a month to sustain that channel. You also, Greta, Gotham is doing a tip jar.
Yeah. We've been trying to really work on that emote and like tips and bits and all this kind of stuff that was complete. Like, I've been likening it to, buying stuff in Pokemon Go. So people kind of like, apparently most people understand that. Like it's hard to get some of these things to work, but essentially trying to keep everybody in the platform tipping you rather than having to like go out, do something with PayPal. Like Twitch has a pretty good system that they use with their gaming community of supporting people directly. Like you can have a little scroll going over saying, Greta Turbo tipped 2 bits or whatever. And like you can, it's dopamine releasing kind of procedure where people are like kind of competing for who's going to be the biggest tipper that event. And you kind of make it like almost like a drinking game, like, and it's been marginally, we've actually had a few where we've made, not as much as we would if we were playing in a venue, but a decent amount for an hour. But I wanted to speak to something about the pay-per-view model also being a little bit prohibitive to something that holistically and ethically I've been wanting to try to figure out, which is how to make it easier and cheaper to watch Derby in general. Because one of the things that, and this is kind of more me speaking as me. So think of me as more like I'm a Pentagon official and I'm just speaking on behalf of myself and not my league. I think that it is incredibly important, and I think a lot of people will probably agree with me, that ticket sales overall have gotten too high because of the cost of the venue to put on the games. And so like when you're trying to sell a ticket at $35 a pop to people who just can't afford it, they're not going to come watch. And if we have the opportunity to make it so you can pay $3 and watch a game, but we get an audience of 100,000 people, that's something. But we have to build that audience. So that's what I think, that Twitch is actually almost more valuable than a direct income source, a way to start building that audience so that when you do have a pay-per-view event, you actually have people who are going to pay for it to the tune of something that would actually end up making you over that profit margin, or at least covering expenses. But
with Twitch, and I'll just throw this out there, there is a vastly untapped source of revenue in the Amazon Prime process, where if somebody has Amazon Prime, they get a free subscription to any channel they want. And that works out to be like $2.50. Like as an affiliate, not yet a partner. I was looking right at you, Ben. As an affiliate, I think it's like $2.50. And if you already have Amazon Prime, and you think about how many people are in your system that have Amazon Prime, that's $2.50. And I did an event this February. It was the only event I've done this year, and it's a 4-day event down in Pennsylvania. And I actually broke even for the trip based on like what came in for donations in Twitch Prime. Now that's a big deal because that's never happened before. And so it's there. And it's there, and I really want to see leagues be able to take advantage of that. So okay, let's answer these questions. We have a couple other ones here.
I can't even see them.
So Joel has this question about using helmet cams to get POV shots from officials and skaters. So that's something I looked at. And the first thing that happens that becomes kind of for me, just like it's an impossible hurdle, is safety, because you can't get any sort of, even the smallest camera, you can't get that onto a person without having too much other stuff to go along with it. Even like if you take something like a GoPro, right? You all of a sudden now on a helmet have a thing sticking out there that could potentially hurt somebody. And that's been the biggest thing that's kept me from trying anything like that. But I like where you're going with this, in that there's a real challenge to try to make things look a little bit different and to try to have your own kind of, for me, I just wanted like a signature look. So it's sometimes you've got to just, I hate the phrase think outside the box, but essentially you've got to think outside the box. If you've ever watched any of our more recent events on the corner camera, I got an inexpensive like crane jib arm. So, a shot will start out high and then come down low, and then it's at track level as they're coming around the corner, and then it goes back up again. And it's worked pretty well. People have liked it. So those kind of things, that kind of innovation, I think is really important. So Joel, keep asking like those kind of questions, like those what if things. Actually,
I can speak to that too without seeing the question. Our solution to that is that we did experiment with helmet cams like a while ago. One of the issues with what we were doing back in the day is we didn't have a wireless way of switching those in, because the problem is that you do need a way of actually getting that information to your switcher. So what we did in our post is we had our floor cam in, I think, corner 3. We had a camera on the floor in corner 3 to kind of offset the elevated cameras on the other side of the track, which then kind of had that crash zone element, which was a good way of kind of getting a slight change of pace. It's kind of like the jib, but without the jib. And then what we also did, and you'll see this in some of the games that we broadcast from like back in the day, a center cam, which is kind of at the discretion of your officials and whoever you're dealing with, which does kind of get that feeling, because essentially what that center cam, literally standing in the center with a full-fledged camera with eyes on what's going on so you don't die, like getting that lineup, getting the people, like the coaches talking to the players, even though you can't necessarily hear them, getting that sensation. And I think now probably technology has improved to the point that you can actually get a relatively inexpensive way of like blasting that wirelessly to a switcher. And that is something I definitely am going to look into when we start getting back to that.
Yeah, I'm going to weigh in that I've been watching attempts at that for so many years, and it's a really cool idea that after people do it, they say this footage is unusable. Mm-hmm. It doesn't tell the story. It doesn't help us learn the game. It doesn't really get us what we want. So I would discourage you from investing too much time and money and effort into that, when you should be starting with, how do I reach an audience with just how cool the game looks from a bird's eye? Like, look at it, look at every other sport. How many sports are attaching a GoPro to an official and using that to show off their sport? It's not where we need to be right now. Roller derby needs to start from, how do we show off how cool this sport is from a regular sports broadcasting perspective. But it is a question that always comes up, and I appreciate you bringing it to us. And I love to see those examples. And like Chad said, finding new cool ways to tell the story is always great. So if you find a great solution, we'd all love to hear it. I want to jump from that to Beaker the Muppet.
Yeah.
Beaker asked, so according to my guide, 2020 megabits per second, symmetrical 20 megabits is about the lowest bandwidth that we would consider streamable. The question is what Chad is getting with the wireless hotspot solution.
Yeah. So I think in the guide, the suggestion is a 1080 stream. So if you're going to do 1080, 2020 is really where you need to be at. No, my streams typically, I actually do them at 720, and the reason for that is data consumption. And if I can send less data and then still have it look really good, then that's where I want to go. As anybody who's ever like seen our setup knows, internet access is always like, it's like the biggest stressor. And I have like piles of ways to try to get data. I lug around a few hundred feet of Cat6 cable. I've used Verizon data for a long time. Now, how much data does that take? I was usually carrying a plan with about 30 gigabytes of data, and that would get me through a weekend if it was like a 12-game tournament. And maybe I'd have to try to carry over some data from the previous month. What's tricky with things like that, there's very few plans out there that have unlimited data. You're looking at 720, you're looking at 2.5 gigabytes per game. So unlimited data doesn't really exist. You're going to get throttled on Verizon with any of their devices. You're going to get throttled at 15 gigabytes. So one of the things that I've done, there's a company called Mobile Satellite Technologies, and I have this cool little box that actually runs on the T-Mobile network. And through this company, I get truly unlimited data, and it works pretty well. I'm usually at 720. 10 is fine. I can do 10 and 10 if I'm the only one using it. So kind of long-winded way to answer that question.
No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the complexity, because that is why I avoided getting too into the weeds in the guide, is because those solutions, like, basically my answer is you got to check what local providers you have. And if you're in the United States, the answer is completely different from somebody who's in Canada, completely different from somebody who's in Europe. Helsinki last year has absolutely amazing 4G service everywhere, and it's super cheap because they don't have much hardline internet there. It's all wireless and it's all cheap, and it worked great. But that's not the same in the UK. That's not the same in Germany. So that's a really tough question to answer when you start getting into the mobile data as your WAN connection. I just texted Greta. Joel
My
Ware says,
phone is dead. I'm sorry.
Oh, gee. What is working?
Nothing. Literally nothing.
Joel Ware says, Greta, I loved the setter cam shots on that game you showed the other night.
Yeah, no, they're paprika. They're not, you don't use them as like your main thing. When we would cut that cam, and I was watching that game, I was like, whoa, we did a really good job on this game, because it really was. It was one of our very, very first breakout games. So we put a lot of effort into the editing, but we did not switch that in live. We had to add that after the fact. And if you notice, Ben, do you mind if I talk a little bit about film language again?
You go for it. We are
okay.
going to move on after this answer, though, because we are over time and have some more things to hit.
I'll make it the quickest possible. So the problem with Derby is because it happens in a round. You can't treat it like you treat basketball or hockey or things that have a proscenium, where you are this idea of crossing the line to make sure that you don't confuse your audience about what's happening left, right, and things like that. Like, so you have to be aware of the fact that you're dealing with something that happens in a circle. So one of the issues is that when you use a center cam, there's a potential danger of screwing the audience's head up by not knowing where they are in the game. So we used it for things like before the jam started, a jammer coming out of the pack. We barely ever used it for action happening within the pack. And we made sure that we generally cut it in addition to something that gave you a real good sense of where you were in the game, so that you don't get confused. Because if you just have a center cam and no other information, you're going to get dizzy. So you have to treat it very like a spice and not like an actual like piece of dialogue.
Again, I wish you could see me, because I nodded emphatically with you through that whole thing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for
one of the
bringing up
things.
the 180-degree rule.
Oh yeah. Look it up. It's a lot more. And there's ways to. They have diagrams, which I can't show you, obviously, but it's important to know that.
Yeah. Okay. This was the other main segment of the webinar, is broadcasting through the artificial off-season. Greta, if you're following along, we are on slide 15. So I know we're over time. I appreciate everybody hanging out. If anybody needs to drop, feel free. Again, we are recording. But this is the section where I want to talk about things that are that are discussed in the Return to Play guide that are, particularly have to do with what we can do to still have roller derby out there in front of people's eyes, getting an audience watching and engaging and doing that sort of stuff. So here is just a look at some of our channels. And I want to say that every panelist here has done some live streaming during the artificial off season. And I want to start with Trek's experience.
Oh no! Yeah, mine's like a cautionary tale, I think, more than a positive experience. But yeah, we put together a couple of early attempts at some live streaming, and it was successful in some ways and then unsuccessful in other ways. So it was a good thing to kind of try out for us and see what worked and what we need to improve on. And we haven't gotten back on the horse yet, but I think we will very soon. But basically, yeah, I work in public radio professionally, and so producing content and coming up with interesting conversations and something cool to feature for the community. That part's easy. I think the part that was a little bit more difficult was learning OBS, learning what was going wrong when something was going wrong, and then basically, for my part anyway, trying to live direct the broadcast and also be a part of the broadcast, which was a lot too much for especially first time out. So I made a couple of really key errors, I think, in our early streaming. The first one was rookie move. I went over Wi-Fi. And I could have plugged my dang laptop in. I just didn't. So that's something that's easy to fix.
Wi-Fi didn't work? I'm amazed.
The other thing, rookie mistake, I think, was just that I had a really old laptop, an old piece of hardware that just wasn't up to the job, which is something to watch out for. Old hardware was not built for the platforms that exist now. So those were two lessons learned, two easy things to fix, I think. And so I do hope that we'll get back into doing some live streaming content. We have a ton of ideas about what to do. It just takes, time and people committed to it. So yeah, you can check out our partial, really blocky streams on our YouTube archive if you're interested to see what a failed stream looks like. But it's something, you got to go through these things to figure out how to get it working.
Greta, why don't you share with us what has been working for Gotham and your experience? Because you started Gotham's Twitch channel after lockdowns were announced and the seasons were canceled and everything. So tell us about starting from square one, building a Twitch channel, and what's been working for you.
Well, we actually got real lucky in that most of our tech people, we have a team, and most of the tech team is officials because they just knew how to do this stuff because they were already doing overlays. So we had already been working with OBS with our scrimmages to put the who makes it? Please tell me who makes it, because I still think Ringster in the back of my head, and that's not true. But whoever makes it.
Carolina Rollergirls.
Thank you, CRG. You see how old I am. CRG overlays with green screen, and Kate Sarasara, who's a tech genius. She basically figured out how to make all that work. So already in our practice space, we had that all set up. So we were already prepared if it had to happen that we would literally start streaming the weekend that we thought we were going to have our first game that ended up getting canceled anyway, which was right on that brink. So right after that, we were like, okay, let's do this Twitch thing. And then we, over time, kind of figured out, well, how do you show a game where you can't all watch it on the stream because you'll be 20 seconds behind? So figuring out how to do that by sending everybody the video ahead of time and synchronizing watches and starting the game all at the same time. So you'd be all on the same page. And we started just kind of experimenting with what worked, what didn't. Yes, hardware was a thing. We found out that the 12-year-old Mac Pro Tower was bulletproof in streaming, but a laptop that was 4 years old wasn't. And things you learn a lot. And then each each person who was directing, we just kind of like let them fail if they were going to fail. I failed a few times. We had to have streams get picked up by other technical directors, like through massive like Slack just bombs of like, who is going to pick this up because it's not working, things like that. We don't have PC based streaming. That's something possibly to talk about, that the hurdle for having a professional streaming software as a Mac user is a little higher. Wirecast is one of the cheapest versions and it's not cheap. So we've been doing everything through OBS, Zoom calls, things like that. And we've been kind of discovering how to do that in a way that would be mostly reliable. It's not always reliable, but figuring out ways to put captions on it if someone wanted to have it be accessible through captions, things like that. So we've been slowly experimenting, and I've been encouraging failure almost. Like I've been encouraging people to try anything that they want to try, and we've been trusting people to kind of like work through technical problems, and we are very, good about supporting each other in the chat, so that even if something goes wrong, everybody's like, we're about to be up again. Like we work really hard to kind of get that engagement so that we don't lose any new people that we've got. And like the Gotham After Dark thing has a very small but very dedicated audience, and that's like a place that it's more fun to show things that aren't necessarily like Gotham's content, but like we've been finding like old home videos of things and like putting that up, and like being careful about copyright. We usually take every Gotham After Dark down. That's one of the only ones I left up, so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. But we also are in communication with Twitch about what is possible all the time. Like we've been asking for that front page access, so that we can get a boost of 1,000 viewers. I'm not always sure how many of those viewers are actually real people. But we've been working with Twitch, who is very eager to get more sports on. Like they want us because they realize that they are sports right now until everybody else is able to get a system together. So yeah, we've been just throwing everything at the wall, seeing what sticks, and making sure that everybody comes and supports each other in the chat. That's basically how we've been doing it.
One thing I want to add is that you not only started this channel from scratch, but you moved it into a monetizable affiliate account all on your own.
Yeah,
in a month. Talk about the path to affiliate.
Yeah, the path to affiliate, again, was something that I had to kind of like learn on the fly. It was not, I talked to Ben a lot about it. Essentially, you have to hit benchmarks. And the benchmarks are mostly related to engagement and audience size and number of hours streamed. So it's been interesting to kind of tell our media team, who is more used to a more social media thing where you're trying to like curate. And we're like, no, it's not about curate. It's about just getting the stuff up. You need to get the stuff up. And so we were very careful about having a couple big banner events that we put a lot of advertising into so we could get those numbers. And then on the flip side, worrying about having enough content, having enough hours streamed, having enough of a consistent audience to hit the benchmarks to become affiliate. And we made it in record time. Like it was quick. And so we've been able to do a whole bunch of like amazing streams with pretty robust audiences with almost not that much effort. I mean, it's effort, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, which was great. But they tell you what you need to do. Like there's a whole list. They gamify it. They give you confetti things that show up as graphics when you've hit a benchmark.
Yeah, it's not a 23-page document. It is just like a very gamified, reach these achievements. They are so much more concise than I am. And they pay you at the end of it. So that's great.
They do. Well, they're concise, but they're confusing because they like to make everything kind of clever. So sometimes it's not, you kind of have to like just go with it because it's going to be in a language that you might not understand. So yeah.
I want to use this opportunity to segue into the fact that one of the greatest things to come out of the artificial off season is that every stream we do has had pets
Cats,
and family
yes.
members interrupt them every single time. And it is so great to get to see everybody's family from their homes interrupted by their daily lives. It's fantastic content. Okay. Some other things to pick up where we were with Gotham's experience. You're absolutely right that getting it out there and just pushing it out the door and making it happen is more important than curating or like perfectly polishing it. The Twitch world has really opened up streaming to anything goes, and Twitch audiences absolutely love it when things don't go right because it's very human. They share the experience, they have fun with it, it's engaging, it's entertaining, as long as you make it that way. You know, embrace the chaos, embrace the weirdness, just make it part of your show because you're engaging the audience through that.
Right. Well, the Mav TV one was a very specific thing because I want to speak just really briefly about that because that was pure audience. So Bobby Narco, one of our announcers, mailed me a VHS tape, which I then digitized, a VHS tape that was labeled Roller Derby #2. I'm sorry, it's just too funny. And we started just playing it and it had all the commercials intact, all of which referred to, yes, they were all for defunct things. And then Chad, NERDerby, decided he would take it upon himself to call all of the toll-free numbers. I'm going to cry.
Every one of them. Every one of them.
All of the toll-free numbers and figure out what they actually went to. So it became this complete interactive experience with this trashy TV channel. It was unbelievably fun. And like, I kind of want to do it again because technically like we are showing something that Gotham is involved in, but it's, you know, out of print. You can't get it. So I feel a little bit more comfortable about streaming something like that. But like it was just the most amazing audience engagement on this kind of small scale about watching this thing that was in a totally different planet of Derby. Like from how we were, you know, we took what we could got. So we got this man show, the TV channel. But like that was a way of like creating engagement in ways that I didn't even think were possible. Calling toll-free numbers. We now are unofficially.
It's probably not something that most people should do like at 1 o'clock in the morning.
But it was great. I mean, like, but that's the kind of thing. Twitch is a little bit wild that way. So it was a lot of fun.
Chad, I think that's a great segue. Why don't you tell us what you've been up to with the NERDerby channel?
So I had this realization a few weeks ago that I have a lot of games on my hard drive here, and that I'm not, you know, some of them are up on YouTube, and I'm pretty terrible at getting stuff archived up there. So I thought, you know, I had this space of time from 10:30 to midnight where I'm not really doing anything. I mean, I'm kind of working till 11, but whatever. So I thought, you know what, I'll stream a game, and I try to stream one every night. Some nights I end up playing video games or something, but I try to stream one every night. And then the real reason I want to do that is because it kind of builds this expectation that there's going to be probably Derby happening every night on Twitch. Mm-hmm. So people will come hang out and we'll watch a game from the last couple of years on my channel. And then at midnight or pretty close to it, we'll raid over to Gotham's channel and we'll take the party over there, and then, you know, we'll hang out and, you know, be the chat rats that we are, and just be, be foolish all night long. And it's been, you know, it's actually kind of like, especially in this sort of very kind of depressing and lonely off season, it has been a ton of fun to hang out with, you know, a bunch of Derby folks.
Yep, and now we're unofficially sponsored by the Fish Pen.
Yeah, the Fish Pen. You can actually see my Fish Pen knockoff is actually on my microphone's arm. That is a Fish Pen, and I've zip tied it to my mic stand, so I always have it, and I'll always know.
That's like, yeah, but that's what Twitch is made of. It's like inside jokes. Yeah.
It's such an inside joke now that like there's this whole Fish Pen meme now that if you haven't watched Gotham After Dark, you're kind of missing out. So like Like, get in there to, I don't know if you're streaming tonight, but get in there and you're going to figure out and you're going to learn what the fish pen is all about. And that's the fun of doing not only just like the streaming, but that's kind of why I like Twitch as a platform, because you can kind of start building these this community and this, the inside jokes and the expectations, and seeing people that you get to kind of not really meet, but like kind of meet, and maybe you already know them, in the chat. So it's good. It's great engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I want to talk a little about what WFTDA has been doing. We have had a WFTDA Twitch channel for a couple of years. We've really been testing the waters with how that works into WFTDA broadcasting. And until 2020, it was solely dedicated to, hey, we're going to throw up some tournament games, which allows everybody to watch for free and engage in chat and whatever, but it would only be one game per tournament. So over a couple of years, we really didn't have much of a catalog there. We did utilize the soft paywall feature in the 2019 postseason to upload all of our games a little while after they happen. And then if you didn't buy a watch pass, you could go subscribe to our Twitch channel for $5 or free if you were a Prime subscriber to then watch all of the tournament games. So it was a way around having to buy a watch pass. A lot of people took advantage of that. And it really helped us cover those costs and also build up a web presence. So we got started on this early, and that was okay for broadcasting games, but we had no social engagement on Twitch prior to the lockdowns. So then when all the tournaments canceled, I'd already had this idea in my head that one of the things that I want to start is more WFTDA shows that are not just broadcasting games. Roller derby is a huge community with so much going on outside, off the track. You said out of the box. I like to say off the track these days. So off the track thinking. And so we had kind of had this plan of, in the long run, when there's time, when there's resources, let's build some shows. Let's build more outside of gameplay. We had attempted this couple years ago now with a show that we called Roller Derby Watch Party, and it was a hosted show for hosts. You could probably maybe find a really old archive of the weirdness that it was, but it didn't really go anywhere. Well, once there weren't any tournaments or anything to cover, we said, all right, now's the time. Let's make some new shows. And from that was born the WFTDA Shows and Content team. It's an amazing team of people who have volunteered their time and talents to create shows, along with Quad Media running as the technical support. And some really great stuff has come of that. Very recently, we did a special hosted by Scar Trek that I want to hear about what went into it, why you did it, and what you thought of it.
Yeah, it was quite the monster. So, but yeah, we went back to a fan favorite tournament from 2017, the International D2 playoffs that was hosted in Pittsburgh, and kind of did a highlight reel, a lot of interviews, brought in some skaters who were at the event, brought in a bunch of the announcers who were there working the broadcast and house announcing at that event. And yeah, just kind of tried to relive it like a highlight reel. And I think I threw so many production elements at you, especially with all the people coming in and out of the broadcast. But the support was there. You did an amazing job, holding it together technically. And I think a lot of preparation, in terms of doing the research, writing the script, picking the clips, doing all that stuff. That took some time, but in the end, I think it was a lot of fun for the folks who were involved, and hopefully, more people get to see it and enjoy it. in an archive format, because it was for the people at least who were there at that tournament, it was a very special event. So it was fun to relive it.
Yeah, so that happened, was that last weekend? 2 weeks ago.
I think it was 2 weeks now, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks, and I still haven't edited it. I've been a little busy preparing for today's webinar, but I promise you that Relive Litzberg will reach the WFTDA channel. And yeah, I just want to echo that it was fantastic. We are in tournament season now. Like, I'm looking, I still have like my ghost calendar, which was the roller derby event calendar that I started compiling.
Oh, that's sad.
And it's really sad. I'm gonna go to a dark place right now because my calendar says that I'm supposed to be in Dallas this weekend for a tournament that was never officially announced to everybody. So instead, we got to relive an old tournament, which was fantastic. Like, there was a lot of engagement. People had a ton of fun. And that's why I wanted to have this section, this talk about like, what can we be doing during the artificial off season? And I really appreciate everybody sharing what you've been up to and the things that you've created and you know, the experiences you've brought to the roller derby community and potential fans during this time. I'm also going to point out down in that corner, there's a screenshot from Twitch of the roller derby Twitch team that I created, set up, and I'm inviting anybody who creates roller derby content on twitch.tv can be a member of this team. And so I've gotten a few people hooked into it. But the cool thing about that team is anybody can click through the WFTDA channel or NERDerby's channel to the team and see who else is in the roller derby team. And it's just more roller derby content, and it helps spread the word and get things out there. We've also talked about using raids and things like that to help move audiences between channels. You can auto-host another roller derby channel that helps people find content. So it's been a great platform, in my experience, to help us share the audience and get more out there. So if anybody is looking to start making content, looking to start a Twitch channel, you know, by all means, approach us, ask us questions. We'd be happy to help. But really, like, the idea is let's create a critical mass of roller derby on these platforms to keep people engaged, but also get roller derby out there in front of more eyeballs.
Hey, Ben, one question I think people might have in mind on this particular point, because I had it back in the day, was we have a little group of subscribers on YouTube already from years past, and just putting content there for the league. So I think when I came to you, asking some questions about WFTDA broadcast, my question was like, well, why should we go to Twitch? Because we already have an audience that's going to be notified over on YouTube. Do you want to answer that for the group? Because I think a lot of people have legacy audiences on YouTube. You can stream live to YouTube. Sometimes it goes really wrong. But what's the big difference, and what's the reason to go to Twitch?
I probably answered your question with another question, didn't I?
Probably.
That's my MO. Yeah, I'm glad you bring this up. And I think my response to you was that if you have the audience there and that's where you want to be, stay there. I know that some leagues have built a presence on other platforms, especially YouTube, just because it's been around longer, just because it's been easy to put your VODs up there. If you have a YouTube audience, stay on YouTube. If you don't have an audience and you're looking for a place to build, let's consider what's best for you. I would right now say that where things are, Twitch is the best place for new leagues who are just getting into this to build a presence on Twitch. But I also know leagues like Rose City Rollers have a huge YouTube fan base, subscriber list. That's where they've been streaming for years. I wouldn't say, hey, Rose City, you have to move to Twitch. I would say, Rose City, look at what YouTube is doing now, because YouTube has introduced their own $5 a month subscriber thing. It's not subscriptions, because you subscribe to YouTube for free. I don't know. It's in this guide that I wrote and published, but you can click through for more information. But YouTube has their own system that's very close to Twitch. So absolutely, go that route. but really feel out the platform, see what's happening on each platform. I will say that I still think Twitch has the better experience for us to share audiences and that social stuff, like Chad and Greta were talking about. The audience experience, I feel, is still better. We can do things like raids. We have these teams. YouTube is still a little disjointed, and YouTube tends to silo. Your channel is your channel. You're not really part of a greater roller derby community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really up to you. And if you really want to get creative, play on both channels. Play on all channels. You know, WFTDA's model is go live on Twitch because Twitch is so good for live engagement, but then VOD everything to YouTube because YouTube is by far a better place for finding VOD content and watching when you want to watch. Twitch just isn't, it's not a great experience for finding old videos or browsing through a catalog. They're working on it, but it's still not as good as YouTube.
Can I ask a question about, like you might cover it at some later point, but have you automated that, or is that something you do 100% manually? Like, do you download your stream or record your stream as it's happening and then port it, or is there some way that you're doing it like organically through like Restream or something?
I'll answer for me. I know Chad is going to have some things to say about this, but for WFTDA's content, I record everything locally as it's going out live, and then I edit it. A lot of that is because audio coming through headsets and webcams is pretty terrible. So I always, at the very least, clean up the audio. I fix the ins and outs and just make it exactly what we want. I usually add things like the like and subscribe buttons all pop up for the YouTube audience. So I always do cleanups and additions specifically for YouTube. And that's why I always encourage people, go watch us on YouTube. If the show already happened, go watch it on YouTube. It'll be there 48 hours later. So that's my process, is I have a local record that I re-edit and then I upload to YouTube. No automation. It is hands-on. It is time. It takes a lot of time, but it's because I'm curating. That's where the curation comes in, is I'm curating a more VOD experience for the long term for YouTube. Chad, you want to talk about your process?
I wish I had a better process. I really do. Usually what happens is I come home from a tournament and I'm like, I do not want to go to another roller derby game ever. And then I'll try to get stuff uploaded. There's a few days of burnout afterwards. I don't really do a whole lot of editing on games. While I'm recording and I'm live, especially on Twitch, I do try and stop and restart in between games, because when it does come time for it, and this always happens, everybody wants to go home that night and watch themselves play or watch the team they're going to play tomorrow. I try to put breaks in there so it's a little bit easier to try to find the game that you might be looking for. Otherwise, you will have a 10-hour long video that you've got to try to scrub through, and that's a huge pain. It would be possible using things like Restream to stream to Twitch and to YouTube at the same time. And in doing so, that would, that could put your archive up there and you wouldn't have to upload it. So that's like for 2021, that's something I might try to do. I don't want to encourage people to watch over on YouTube because they're going to miss out on the conversation, but it's a decent place to have it get put. Also,
quick side note on that, do check your Twitch affiliate or partner agreement and make sure that that's allowed, because our conversations with them, they really want us to be Twitch exclusive for the live content, and that's why we have a 48-hour break before it goes to YouTube. So just to tack onto that.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
I do what I want.
Well, I mean,
demonetized.
It depends on who you're doing. Like, I mean, we were in negotiations. Like, for instance, I think again, talking to them is helpful, because we would never do it for every event, but there are certain people we did Derby with drag queens, and it was kind of a pilot to see how it would work. And what we did is we had two drag queens from New York City watch a game and attempt to announce it and compete for who was going to announce it best, with the full understanding that there is no way you can understand Derby in like 20 minutes of watching footage. But when we did it, I was like, we really should be doing a thing where we're making it worth their while by allowing them to stream it directly on their channels as well, because not every community is on Twitch yet. And like the funny thing is, I have now pestered Twitch with a few questions. Ben, you're off the hook now. And they give very honest and understanding answers depending on a case by case basis. So like, no, we wouldn't do this with every stream, but if we're dealing with someone who's an influencer on Instagram, but not Twitch, it could be worth it to look into a restream so that you can get a double build of audiences, but have the branding so that they know that they can go to Twitch and subscribe to the channel. So it's interesting. Like there's definitely fudginess there.
To tack on to what you were just talking about, I think one of the opportunities that Derby has not capitalized on yet is reaching out to other streaming communities. And it's funny that you did the Derby with drag queens, because I know that there's also a very large drag queen streaming community on Twitch.
Now there is, yeah. There wasn't, but there is now.
Well, there has been. I actually worked for TwitchCon for 3 years and got to record a lot of their panels, and that community was always present, and there was always a drag queen panel. So, I think that's a great tie-in potential, is go out and find some of those communities that overlap. Twitch is not just video games. It's not just 12-year-olds screaming at each other. There are things other than that. I know that's the vast majority, but know that there are opportunities to collab with other Twitch streamers, and especially lifestyle and just chatting streamers. We should absolutely be reaching out and trying to tie in more non-roller derby streams to kind of build this community.
Yeah, co-streaming is a great idea. You can, you might be able to find somebody who's big in the just chatting section, and what they would do is essentially they would watch your content on their stream, and it kind of give their take on it and their thoughts on it. That happens quite a bit. I think I've seen that with the WFTDA streams in the past.
We're pretty good on what we've been doing during the artificial off season. Ready to move to my next slide? And we are not within my time range at all anymore.
You've got a bunch of talkers on here. I mean, what did you think was going to happen?
I'm just glad that you're all willing to give up your Saturday to do this. Like, the sun is out. I really want to put on my skates and leave, but it is here. hey, West Coast, baby. Okay, yeah, we only get 3 days of sun in Portland, so I gotta enjoy them while I got them. So on the topic of platforms, I just want to hit this quick. The roller derby community is pretty good at social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those things that I ignore because I just feel old and weird when I get on them. There's excellent presence there, and I think part of the thing that I'm butting my head against is that we have a sport that happens in long form that looks great in long form video. You can't upload a 90-minute game to your Instagram feed. So how do we capitalize on these broadcasts and get that audience shifted over? We haven't had a whole lot of success turning people who are constantly scrolling on their Instagram feed into long form viewers on our Twitch and YouTube channel. So that's why I put in the return to play the suggestion that you need to make your Twitch and or YouTube part of your social media toolkit, right? If you've already got a great Facebook following or people who are updating your Facebook or your Instagram or your Twitter, get those people involved with tying that audience into your more long form content. especially if you're looking at monetization options, right? If you want that ad revenue, if you want those Twitch subscribers, find a way to move over that audience you already have on the short form social media over to some long form content that you can sell subscriptions to, that you can get ad revenue to. So there, understand that the audience is kind of a split, and that's why I said versus, but then I also said broadcast plus social media. Make the experience engaging for people who want to be on Instagram and get most of their derby communication and their hits of roller derby through Instagram. Find a way to engage them. Most recently, we've been doing this Community and Bowls virtual challenge show. We go live every other Thursday, and it's posted to YouTube. It's about to premiere on our YouTube channel in 2 hours. I'm really stoked for episode 3 to go out to everybody. But CIB has a huge Instagram following. We are working really hard, and it takes a lot of effort to say, hey, we know you love seeing our posts on Instagram, but come watch the full show either live on Twitch or on YouTube. So bridging that gap, bridging those audiences has been really tough. Yeah, you might have 1,000 followers on Instagram. That doesn't equal 1,000 views on YouTube unless you really, really work at it. So that's just a thing that's there. Engagement is something we've been talking about. Chad and Greta have both talked about how amazing their chat engagement is, and just the chilling out, doing cool stuff. WFTDA is similar. Believe me, it's not a stuck-up organization that doesn't let you have fun. We're only that most of the time. We really do want to have a fun audience and a fun roller derby community and experience. So engagement is something I've really tried to push. I know even Trek during Litzberg, I was like, make sure you're watching the chat. Watch the chat. Engage with people who are trying to engage with you. Like, create that two-way street, because that's something that's also unique to the streaming, the live streaming experience, is that somebody can read your Facebook post 3 days later and respond to it, but that's not as fun as the person who is watching you live, asking you questions, commenting, and you responding to them live. Like, it's a really engaging experience when done right. Monetization, we've talked about. There's lots of opportunities for it. And then one of the biggest things to me is this year we have a lot of trouble with the fact that there are no games. But I do consider everything we've invested in our shows and content team, all the things we've published to YouTube, building for the long term. That's our video on demand archive. That is marketing the sport. That is marketing the culture. That is building a look behind the curtain at what roller derby is and the community we have. All of these shows and cool and fun things that we're doing will last for several years. And all it takes is somebody getting a suggestion for one of those videos 3 years from now. As they're browsing something else on YouTube, they get a suggestion for a WFTDA video. They click on it, say, oh, what is this? And then they unlock the door to roller derby, right? Their introduction to roller derby might be Collab Lab or Litzberg or the virtual challenge show. But building that catalog and that presence on those platforms is just another way to reach a new audience.
Yeah, and also I kind of feel a little bit bad that I didn't kind of get to this before, but one of the other positives about this is that Derby is so much more than just the All-Stars. And I think that what we have kind of fell into a trap about, and there's been a massive reckoning for good reason about like representation in the Derby community, especially when it comes to people of color or people who aren't necessarily the top level skater of every single league or have the biggest clout. What we can do by busting out these channels and busting into social media is improve greatly people's ability to see themselves represented in Derby skaters in a way that I feel like hasn't been a high priority or enough of a high priority. So especially in the Gotham world, we've been working very hard to make our virtual event team as diverse as possible, as with as many different kind of points of view, or we have people who do marketing, but we for their life, and people who do PR for their life. And we also have people who are just creatives or actors, or, other other people coming from other worlds to kind of try to not only come up with a diversity of ideas, but a diversity of the faces that you're actually seeing and the points of view that you're actually seeing, which is why we now have this kind of grab bag talk show. It's the Ham and Hammy show, so named because I had the wrong label on there and changed it midstream and the name stuck. So yes, that's how we do. And they have been, like our Tuesday stream is just about friendship. So it's like they're having different friends come on and talk to each other. That's going to be the hour. And like there's going to be one where they're talking to Derby Without Borders and Black Diaspora and all of these different groups that have been, we literally are doing giving the platform over to people so that they can speak about, this kind of massive like social justice reckoning that Derby has kind of overall been going through. But also like just beyond that, the idea of you're not just going to see the Susie Hot Rods and the Violet Knockouts and the, Bonita Applebombs you're going to see everybody. You're going to see the people who maybe just started or the people who are in basic training or the juniors or the parents or the people who've been around since the league started. So like, it's important, I think, just to get people understanding of the history of the sport, how we're trying to move forward, how many people there are that you don't get to see if you're just watching tournament play, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great point. I want to start wrapping this thing up because we are about to hit the 2-hour mark. What's downstream is my terrible pun for ending this. Not what's down the road, what is down the stream.
Well, you can catch a lot with your fish pen if you. Sorry, I help myself. Sorry.
Some of the things we've already mentioned, there will be more publications coming from the WFTDA and Quad Media, technical production guide, the look of roller derby and sports broadcasting, and eventually a content guideline, which is sort of the values-based broadcasting, inclusion policy, portraying athletes, all the things that we've been developing within WFTDA, WFTDA Broadcast, and the Talent Management Committee. All of those are planned to come. It develops over time. This is also a publication process that relies a lot on the community and on your feedback. So if you have feedback for the event planning guide, bring it to us. If you have ideas that you want to see covered in a future guide, bring it to us. We absolutely love it. This is for the community, by the community. More virtual shows. Everybody on here will be creating more shows. Yes, Gartrek, you will be creating more shows. Get back on that horse.
I will.
Quad Remy support for global games. So this is something that hasn't been detailed yet, but it's something that we are definitely looking at. Is if you are in a place where you don't have much video production support and you want help getting out to a platform, Quad does have some capacity to help in some instances. It could be just that if you have a camera that you can point at the track, if you can get that out via some internet connection, Quad can take it in, and by Quad I mean me. Quad takes it in, puts it in our switcher, gets it broadcast. We can link in announcers from anywhere in the world. We can link in your scoreboard. We can put all those elements together and get you, a broadcast level production, even if all you have is one camera and some internet.
That's awesome.
And the big one that I can't promise anything yet because there are so many unknowns about, COVID lockdowns, where this pandemic is going, and where roller derby is going. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, but I am in the process of trying to bring together a roller derby pay-per-view platform. I know it says WFTDA platform, but theoretically it can be open to any roller derby and even beyond roller derby. But that big investment that is talked about in the guide And we talked about earlier on the show that investing in a platform and ticketing partners and all the other things, if Quad takes that on, just like we have in past years, we do that investment, then we work with the leagues and the individuals and the events who are having roller derby. You won't have to invest so much from your league. We would just work out a monetization that works in our relationship, where Quad gets a part of the sales, or Quad gets a flat fee or something, and your league has much less investment, because we know that you already have to like step up to start broadcasting. You know, in the case of DC Rollergirls, you got to get to the level that you can make video. If you have to also pay for that platform and everything before you can sell tickets, you're really going to be out a lot of money. So if we provide the platform so you don't have to invest there, then you just focus on how to make the production, and we work together on how you can monetize and replace those ticket sales. So that's in the works. I hope to be able to announce more about that in the coming weeks, and hope that that's something that we can bring more roller derby together. Another part of that is we're really looking at replacing the big tournaments that WFTDA is most known for with virtual tournaments. This has been hinted in a few places, but the idea is once roller derby is going on in lots of places, but we still can't travel. You know, that's one of the reasons we can't promise a championship tournament, is even if your country can start having roller derby, you may not be able to travel anywhere to play other teams in other countries. So if countries are still locked down, but Germany has a tournament, or Germany has a game going on, and then the UK has a game going on, and then New York, and then Illinois, and then Denver, and then California, we can have virtual tournaments. You know, we can show all of those games back to back to back in one broadcast. So there's a lot of talk about opportunities to really bring everybody together and virtualize some of that tournament experience and keep roller derby broadcasting in a sense in the way that it has been for the last 10 years. I also want to hear what's downstream for all of you. Chad, I know you have a workshop coming up. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I sure can. Next Saturday, I have I'll be presenting at the Flat Track Derby announcers. We'll have it's gonna be on Zoom. I can shoot a link out into the chat, but I'm gonna actually be going through. I'm gonna go through my setup, basically what I'm using right now at tournaments, and I'm gonna have an office full of gear. It's gonna be a mess, so you know. Tune in to see what kind of mess I make, I guess. But I'll be going through all the gear I have and just kind of talking about the why I have what I have.
Oh my God. I should do that and show everybody the dinosaur black magic thing. That just everybody would be horrified. Anyway.
I really want to see that.
I can show you mine. Let's see. It's like an old like lightning, really old black magic. It's not taped together, but
this is not it. This is the video card that we were using from back in the day too. This is a good little black magic Thunderbolt shuttle.
Yes.
Yep. I can't see what you're showing, but maybe it was the exact same thing.
It's a little smaller, but yeah, it's been around the world to broadcast derby.
Cool.
Greta, what's coming up for Gotham?
Oh boy, September is going to be a big month. Well, actually, I'll start with tonight. Tonight we are actually broadcasting a courtesy of NERDerby, a Traders versus Arch Nemesis from last year, I think. It's the Traders game, so we're going to have Wall Street Traders commenting. That's going to be at 7:00 tonight. And September is going to be back to old school themed. So everything that we show is going to be basically focused around the first 10 years of Gotham's history. We are going to be showing the very first game Gotham ever played, courtesy of Gotham Mixtapes, which is Game 0. What that means is it was when we only had 2 teams and we were still skating at Skate Key. And we're going to have skaters from that game commenting, some of which haven't been seen or heard from in many, many years, and some of whom never left. We are also going to be showing, I think Apex did a poll at some point, which was like, what was like the best All-Stars year or something like that, and people kind of focused on Gotham's 2011, 2012. So we're showing an All-Stars game from that era. And we're also having AMAs with like the old timers. We're trying to make it very much like a Gotham history like themed month. So that should be really exciting. And the Ham and Hammy show is going to interview the founder of the league, Chassie Crass. They are going to be doing a lot of other stuff. Like we're really, this one's marquee. We are going to do a virtual watch through MST3K style of Whip It because of Gotham's extensive involvement in the unrolling of that. We were very heavily involved in their marketing, including me driving a Penske truck full of our track up to TIFF so that Drew Barrymore could walk on it. And so that Toronto Derby could do a kind of like exposition mini bout thing, which all I really remember from that is being exhausted, not going to an after party, and watching like one skater miraculously jump over like 10 log skaters, and it was unbelievable. But yeah, I never actually watched the movie.
Memories this community generates.
I never actually watched the movie because I was so annoyed about that whole thing. So I am going to be watching it for the first time. It's going to be hosted by me and Margaret Thrasher, who you might have seen in various television and movies. So we're going to do kind of a Gotham at the movies, which hopefully will be a start of the series with Twitch's permission. We just have a creative way of doing it. It's not going to be direct watch. We're going to do it kind of creatively. But that is September. We got a lot going on.
Nice. Trek, what do you got for us? When's DC going to stream again?
Yeah, I think what we should do is really make the move over to Twitch. And I think that's a conversation we'll have, within the league. I do think it's got to be more than one person, on board for that. But that's the big thing that's next for us. And then, we don't have a lot of video of games, at least that I'm aware of. So I think we're going to go along the lines of just talk shows, historical, explorations of archival league stuff with retired roller girls, and just trying to keep folks engaged and then think ahead about what we can do when we're back skating, and we can share roller skating content as well as actual games with the DC audience and help keep them engaged. And then, of course, WFTDA shows and content. I'm a part of that team, too. And so hoping to come up with some great content for the wider roller derby world as well.
Another 5-hour special?
7 hours.
Yeah.
Twitch loves that. Twitch loves that stuff.
Your next script, all you got to do is pad it out a little more. We can do a 3-day, 12 hours a day, just like we're having a real tournament.
Sounds
got this,
great.
Track. You'll make it happen.
Chad, you got to be there, too.
Okay. Sure. I did a 24-hour stream a couple of weeks ago. I probably will do one of those again soon too. That was
nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Trek, thank you for talking about shows and content, so I don't have to. WFTDA.tv will continue to produce content. This show is going to go up eventually for more folks to learn. Please reach out to me, broadcast@quadmedia.tv, or Benjamin at quadmedia.tv. Happy to answer questions, happy to go over the guides, and I look forward to the feedback and helping to get more leagues broadcasting. That's it.
Perfect.
Only an hour and 10 minutes overtime. No big deal.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I'm going to shut it down and kick everybody out.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.